with us. And we want to welcome here tonight in alphabetical order, Gabriel Amo Jr., Stephanie Beauty, Walter Burbrick, Sandra Cano, Donald Carlson, Spencer Dickinson, John Gonsalves, Sabina Matos, Anna Quezada, and Aaron Regenberg. Please note that the Rhode Island Democratic Women's Caucus is an organization that has not and does not intend to endorse a candidate in this race, and therefore has asked all candidates to participate. Our goal tonight is to educate our members and the public about the candidates' important priorities and policies on key issues of importance to our caucus. We're all volunteers, but we have worked hard to create an open and fair format, including that all candidates have an equal access to information about this event. No one has received any advance information other than what everyone has received. All candidates are going to be asked the same questions. All candidates are able to speak without interruptions. Candidates have been asked not to mention any other candidate by name, and should they do so, their mic will be turned off and the opportunity to answer that question will be terminated. The order in which the candidates will answer questions will be varied. All candidates have equal time. 90 seconds for an opening statement, 45 seconds for an open-ended question, 60 seconds for a closing statement. There will be some short 1 or 2 word answer questions interspersed. Because our time is limited, we ask you as candidates to please be as specific as possible in answering your questions. This event is being streamed on Facebook on the Rhode Island Democratic Women's Caucus Facebook page. To you, our audience, we ask that you remain silent during this forum. No clapping, comments, or response of any kind, please. We have a very tight framework, and we want to just move this along and stay focused on the issues. We will all have the opportunity to applaud all of the candidates at the close of the forum. Thank you. Let's get started. And let's start, I'm doing this on a random basis. Let's start with Mr. Gonsalves. You will have the microphone, and when you're finished, if you will pass it to your left, okay? Here is our question. What legislation would you, right here. Which legislation would best address climate change and why? Which legislation would best address climate change and why? 90 seconds.
Great, thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm off. You have 90 seconds for an opening statement. All right, hopefully that's my one mess up tonight, but probably not. So, okay, Mr. Gonsalves.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. I can't thank you enough for being engaged and active in this process, and I want to thank my fellow candidates for also joining us this evening. My name is John Gonsalves. I'm a 2-term city councilman representing the East Side and downtown in the city of Providence. And I'm also a teacher. That's what differentiates me from the rest of the people on this stage. I've spent nearly the last decade as an elementary school teacher. The reason why I'm in this fight is because so many people in Rhode Island are struggling. People are worried about the cost of living. They're worried about housing. They're worried about reproductive rights. They're worried about our climate crisis. We need a bold champion in Washington who can fight for these issues and fight for these values. And what's really important is that this work isn't theoretical for me. I grew up in poverty to a single-parent mother in the city of Providence. And being a person of color, my lived experience is exactly why I'm in this fight. There are so many people who need folks like me to be a part of these fights, and that's exactly what I've done at the local level. I'm really, really proud of the work that we've done. I've been the lead sponsor on dozens of pieces of legislation in the Providence City Council. And what I look to do in Washington is to be a fierce advocate for the people of Rhode Island. And we're going to fight like hell to make sure that we are standing up to the pharmaceutical industry. We're going to fight to make sure that we're working for our children,
Please pass the mic to the left.
Seniors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes. My name is Sandra Cano. I'm a state senator from the city of Pawtucket. And I would like to start with saying thank you to the Rhode Island Democratic Women Caucus for this opportunity, not only to put the candidates in front of you, but this is healthy for our democracy. The first thing that I would like to say is our democracy is at stake. Right now, we will have the opportunity to have a candidate that is going to represent Congressional District 1, and I believe that I'm the only candidate in this stage that have the experience from the local level to the state level, from every level of legislative government, starting from the school committee, two-term city councilwoman, and then now state senator and the chair of the Senate Education Committee. It is important that we have someone that not only have the lived experience, but is passionate and knows the struggles of Congressional District 1 working families. I do have that, and I have passed effective legislation at the State House, at the City Council, and the School Committee that reflects the needs of our working families here in Rhode Island. Legislation such as the right for a woman to choose, gun safety laws, legislation such as access to health care and making sure that everyone, regardless of the zip code, has the opportunity to have health care for their needs, especially after the pandemic. Also, making sure that we have environmental policies that really work in this time of crisis currently in the United States.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure to be here, and thank you.
Thank you. Pass the mic to Ms. Matos. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabina Matos. I have been in local government. I have been elected to office for the past 12 years. I started in the Providence City Council, where I served as a council person for the neighborhoods of Olneyville, Silver Lake, and Valley. I had different roles in the Providence City Council, was president pro tempore and president of the Providence City Council. I have been serving as lieutenant governor for the past 2 years, and I have the honor of my lifetime to be running for the office of Congress. I have to say that as a new immigrant, I came to this country when I was 20 years old. I came from the Dominican Republic. And when I arrived here, I didn't speak the language. And I had been able to, first of all, work in the jewelry factories here in Rhode Island. And after working in the factory, going to learn English after work. Eventually, because education is something very important for my family, went to Rhode Island College and graduated from Rhode Island College. I feel that these are the things that are possible only in this country. If my family have decided to immigrate to a different country that it was in the United States, I don't believe that my story was possible. I believe that American dream is alive, but we have to protect it, because right now we're losing rights, and we need to send someone in Congress that's going to fight for our rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Anderson, and everyone who made this event possible. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, I kicked off my campaign a little over 3 months ago, and I've had the opportunity to travel across our state, across our 1st district, and I'm just in awe by the grit and generosity of Rhode Islanders. You know, the same grit and generosity that I've come to appreciate growing up in my family's restaurant and serving Rhode Islanders with the American Red Cross. But I've also been struck by the frustration and fear that so many folks have. The same frustration and fear that I have as a working father, as an educator, and as a veteran. And, you know, this past week, I met an older woman in East Providence who told me that she had to decide between eating, putting food on the table, and getting medicine. And so folks are frustrated, not only because of high costs and low wages, but because of how divisive and divided our politics are today, and how extremist ideologies are just ripping away the very freedoms that I spent the last 2 decades defending, both as a naval officer and as a civil servant. And so this opportunity, this election provides us, the people of Rhode Island, an opportunity to change that and to channel our frustration and fear for a better future. And I'm running to make sure that your voices are heard loud in the halls of Congress.
Please pass the mic. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being present today, and thank you Democratic Women's Caucus for all of your hard work and efforts. It does not go unnoticed. My name is Stephanie Beauty, and I'm running for Congress. I'm running for Congress primarily because I'm tired of seeing people like me, people like my mom, who have worked 2 to 3 jobs, work as a CNA, not being able to get by. We will not fix things in Congress by sending another politician. Nothing is going to change by doing the same things. In fact, it will continue. We will continue to have the same rhetoric. We will blame the other party for why we can't get things done. And we will not focus on the working class who really need our help, or in fact, demanding our help. Our tax-paying dollars speak to that. And so what I want to do is work for you. The same way that my mom has worked for many of the people that she's taken care of as a CNA. The same way that I have worked as a support coordinator for folks with developmental disabilities and making sure that they had funding so that way they wouldn't lose their services. I believe that about 70% of us are aligned on climate. About 60% of us are aligned on a woman's right to choose. And about 80% of us are aligned on guns. Now, what makes me different is my unique sense of self-starter and ambition, but not only that, but the work that I've done in the private sector at GE, from managing billion-dollar accounts, from working to small startups and being able to scale. So I've been able to see the progression and wanting to ensure that Rhode Island is successful and really supporting our small businesses. Not only that, championing our education and also supporting
Please pass the mic.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Casada, and I wanted to thank each one of you for being here this afternoon. I've been a state senator for the last almost 8 years, and like many of you, I'm here because I represent the regular Rhode Island. I came from the Senate floor, from the factory floor to the Senate floor, from the welfare office to the state office. I'm somebody who never gave anything up to me. I came to this country when I was 17 years old to New York City, and I was able to come to Providence in 1990. When I came here, I came when it was a bad situation for Rhode Island, and I had to be a welfare mom for a little while. Until I went back to school, I got my GED, I went back to college, and I got and now I'm a social worker. But I have to tell you, I'm a woman who went to the State House to pass the minimum wage. I'm somebody who passed the doula for women to have the way when they're having a baby, they can be able to have support. I passed legislation for women to have the right to choose. I passed many other legislation for people to have the opportunity to have a driving license when they're undocumented, and many other legislation. But I can tell you, I fight. I'm not a yes person. I say what I think. I make people uncomfortable, and that's what I've done since I'm being in the Senate. I've even been against the leadership when I have to work for the people of Rhode Island. I'm not the person, and that's what we need in Washington. Somebody who wants to stand up for yourself.
Thank you to the Rhode Island Democratic Women Caucus for organizing this event. My name is Gabe Amo, and I am honored to be before you as a candidate for Congress. And I'm here because of the hard work of my parents. My dad, an immigrant from Ghana, my mom, an immigrant from Liberia, and they are two hardworking people who instilled in me the values that gave me the opportunity to serve at the heights of government, both here for Governor Raimondo and in Washington for two presidents, President Biden and President Obama. And in that last role, just 3 months ago, I had the opportunity to be there for people across the country, whether it was a mass shooting and communities shattered by violence, or whether it was extreme weather and needing to aid and coordinate a response. And I think Rhode Islanders deserve the experience of someone who has been there for people across this country, been there for people across Rhode Island, to impact and drive an agenda that gets us what we need out of the big fights that we have ahead, whether it's on climate, whether it's on gun violence prevention, certainly on the challenges to reproductive freedom that we see across the country. I am ready to be in those fights, and I would be so honored to have your support.
Hello, thank you to the Women's Caucus for organizing this great event. It is wonderful to be here. My name is Aaron Regenberg, and I'm running for Congress because I've got a 2-year-old at home, and I worry about the future. You know, will our kids be safe at school from guns and mass shootings? Will they be able to afford housing and healthcare and college? Will they have autonomy over their bodies? Will they have clean air to breathe? These are dangers that affect all of our kids and all of our communities, and none of them are accidents, right? The gun industry, fossil fuel corporations, radical Republicans are creating and feeding these crises because they're making billions of dollars off of them. And meanwhile, they're trying to distract us. right? They're trying to put the blame on immigrants, on queer and trans folks. They're trying to sow division and hate, so we don't notice that it's them who's taking away our fundamental rights. I know that every person in this room rejects that kind of hate, and that gives me hope. I believe that we can come together and take on those entrenched interests and win. And I know it's possible because we've done it here in Rhode Island. You know, I've been a part of working with many of the people in this room to win concrete progressive policy change, helping lead fights to pass paid sick days and raise wages and create new clean energy programs and expand harm reduction strategies and start the push to reform solitary confinement. Winning real change is possible, but it doesn't just happen, right? We need to organize, we need to mobilize. Things that the Women's Caucus does, things we need our leaders to do. We deserve more than just one more Democratic vote in Congress. We need leaders who can organize and bring people together and have a record of winning real progressive policy change. And that's the work I've been doing in Rhode Island for many years, and I'd be so honored to do it with and alongside you in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. My name is Spencer Dickinson, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. Before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about when I first knew Donnie. He was Reverend Anderson, and he represented the churches of Rhode Island very effectively, and he understood all the principles the Democratic Party stood for. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to...
Yeah, just if you would use she instead of he, please.
Okay. She understood all the issues that the Democratic Party stood for. And here's an example. One day in the Rotunda, my memory is not clear on everything that I did in the last 50 years, but we had a press conference or a speaking event, and I think she was a part of it, I was a part of it. And when I was kind of inspired, and I said a few things I had on my mind. One of the subjects was labor and the rights of labor and the importance of labor. That might have even been the topic. As we were walking back into the chamber, she said, you know, your speech sounded a little bit like the Gettysburg Address. And I said, you know, Donnie, you got me there. That's something that we tend to do because that's the only speech I know. And she said, did you believe everything you just said? And I said, well, yeah, why wouldn't I? And she said, well, I agree with it, and I don't usually hear that, or something to that effect, because essentially...
I'm sorry, Spencer, you've used your time telling a story
I'll
that's
try
not
to
for us.
use my time more wisely in the future.
Okay, great. We'll have someone cut. Here we go. Joanne's going to be moving the mic for us tonight, because we're going to move this mic around a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Anderson. Appreciate it. My name is Don Carlson, and I live in Jamestown, and I'm a volunteer EMT in Jamestown, and I'm running for Congress because I love the state. I grew up here. I was born in Providence, the Lion Inn Hospital, and grew up in a two-story tenement house on 7th Street, right up below the Miriam Hospital and above the Dunkin' Donuts, which is why that smell still has such memories for me these days. So I feel like I have deep Rhode Island roots. I've lived away for part of my life, but my friends always make fun of me for being Mr. Rhode Island because I love the character and the quirkiness and the contrarian nature of this beautiful state in which we live. So I'm grateful to serve it, and I'd like to serve it in Washington. Like my friend John, I'm also an educator. I'm currently a professor at Yale Law School, and I'm on leave to do this full time, to run for this. But I'm also a business person, and I've built a lot of businesses in the field of sustainability, really because I think climate change is one of the main things that we have to fight in this country right now. And so I've built dozens of businesses, either as a CEO or as an investor, as a director, or as a founder, to focus on safe lithium mining and electrostatic motors and renewable energy and improvements to the grid. And so that's been a big part of my life, and I think I can take that expertise to Washington and look at the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the most important environmental legislation of the last 20 years, and really try to get a lot of those funds into Rhode Island, using that expertise to try to build companies and make Rhode Island the renewable energy hub of the Northeast. Wouldn't it be great for Rhode Island to be a net energy exporter, finally, and bring down the cost of electricity, which will lower the cost of living for all of you.
Thank you. Our first question, which you've already heard, but we're going to go down to Senator Cruzado to be the first person to answer this question. And please pass the microphone to your right this time. Here's the question.
45 seconds.
45 seconds for this. Thank you. What specific legislation would best address climate change and why?
Well, it's many of them, but one of them that is green new energy, and I believe that's one of the legislation that can help Rhode Island because that's going to bring improve, bring good paid jobs to the state, going to put money into the governor into the state to improve to provide wind, solar panel, and so many others new environmental for us. And I believe that we need to invest in new energy for Rhode Island because other issue that we've been having in Rhode Island for gas prices.
Thank you. Please pass to your right. To your right. Thank you.
So AOC has already put in this legislation many times and it hasn't passed, and I was quite disappointed that Biden actually didn't implement it, which is the new green energy deal. One of the big proponents is how it services disenfranchised communities, especially Black and brown communities, where you don't see a lot of greenery. One of the big things, even after when I ran for Secretary of State, was really talking to the team members and people in Pawtucket who have continued to fight for the Morley Field that's been locked in chains, not being able to have that access as a green space. And so the green energy deal helps to impact the communities that need the most, that doesn't really get as much attention as it would, but also for job creation for labor unions.
Thank you. To the right, please.
You know, I fundamentally believe that climate change is an existential threat to our economy, to our environment, to our national security, and to the future of our planet. And I've seen the impacts firsthand through my travels and through my work. And, you know, in Alaska and right here at home in Rhode Island. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, over the last 15 years as a civil servant at the federal level, I've pushed hard for education programs and research programs at the Naval War College. It's why I spent time at the State Department advising the Secretary of State and others on climate programs, why I went down to the Pentagon and led programs as well. And in Congress, my focus is going to be on the same, increasing awareness, bolstering investments in clean energy jobs, and protecting our air, our water, and our public lands.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe we need to make sure that we pass the Act on Climate and is implemented everywhere. But while we're doing that also, we have to make sure that we don't forget the communities that have been affected the most by the challenges of climate change. More and more, we see the flooding that is happening in the communities like my community, in neighborhoods like mine. And we have to make sure that when we're talking about climates, we recognize that communities of color has been suffering the consequences for the longest time, and we don't let them behind. Just with jobs, but also making sure that their community receives the support that they need.
Please pass to the right. Thank you.
I'm a mom of 2 children, and the earth is very important, and climate change is real, and it's here today. So 2 things are important, not only to support policies that really attack firsthand today the prevention of climate change effects, but also making sure that we do infrastructure investments that really tackle the effects in our community. So it's important for us to do not only the new green energy deal, but also Inflation Reduction Act, but make sure that the person that goes there understands that infrastructure dollars to Rhode Island to make sure that we do prevention, it is the most important thing. And that constructs not only transition to the blue economy and the jobs that we have the opportunity to do here, but also making sure we save our planet.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that the kids in my classroom that I teach, 4th graders, have a clean future. So the policy that I would support at the federal level is a Green New Deal. We need the most aggressive legislative policy to address our climate crisis because it's an existential crisis, not tomorrow, but now. We will not have a planet if we don't address our climate issues right now. It's why at the local level, I've been the sponsor and the lead sponsor on a right to charge law to bring funding back to our municipality through the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's why I've been the lead sponsor on expanding composting citywide. We can't be on the sideline. We have to address climate.
Thank you.
This might be a good moment to talk about how Congress works. I'm the only one on this panel who's worked in the House of Representatives, which is the job we're interviewing with you for today. And the way Congress works is the majority party rules. Right now, we don't have a majority. So yes, a high priority is for Democrats to take back the majority, and maybe we can implement some of these dreamy ideas. For now, though, the first job is to hit the ground running and to take the Inflation Reduction Act and all the separate policies that are in there and figure out how to use expertise to deliver those funds to Rhode Island so that we can start working. That's what an individual congressman can actually accomplish in this Congress, even though we are in the minority party. So yes, take back the House, but first get to work bringing money into Rhode Island to build resiliency and to build infrastructure and to build the renewable energy jobs of the future.
Thank you. Could you take it down again? Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I have a little catching up to do. And Donnie, thank you for correcting me. I think that serving in Congress or anywhere else in politics, the number one thing is communication, and the soul of communication is respect. And we don't get that from the Republicans because they call us the Democrat Party, and every time they do, it goes up my back. It's a term that somebody like Rush Limbaugh invented. We're not the Democrat Party. We are the Democratic Party, and our legal term is the Democratic National Committee. The environment, probably the best environmental legislation around so far is the Inflation Reduction Act. My problem with that is that that's the wrong name for that bill.
I'm sorry, we have to pass it on. Thank you.
I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race who's been endorsed by any environmental and climate organizations, from Climate Action Rhode Island to Climate Hawks Vote to the Jane Fonda Climate Pact. And they've endorsed me because they know I'm the candidate in this race that has the strongest record of actually taking on big oil to fight for climate action, whether that was as a community organizer working to block frack gas power plants in our state, as a state legislator creating new clean energy programs for working families, or most recently as a new lawyer supporting litigation to hold big oil accountable for their decades of deception and fraud. Big oil, the fossil fuel industry, has a stranglehold on our political system, and the number one priority needs to be building a consensus among Democrats that we need to take them on, that we need to win a Green New Deal, which is something that I've been talking about since 2016, 2017, before it was cool.
Please pass it.
Thank you. I was at the White House when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, when it was in various forms along the way as the most historic climate legislation we've had in this country. And before I entered this race in my last job as Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, I was helping communities across the country figure out how to make it work. And so that would be my priority. One, a vigorous defense of the IRA, because under Republican leadership, there will be continual attacks on that historic legislation, but then getting those dollars for everything from urban forestry, which is a program, or agriculture in there, to the climate resilience funds coming out of the Commerce Department and NOAA, and making sure the consumer side benefits are well known. So there's work to do with what we have in the IRA.
Thank you. The next question is going to start with Mr. Carlson. The microphone's coming back to him. We will move the microphone to the left this time. Here is the question. Do you support a person's right to bodily autonomy and the responsibility for Medicaid and Medicare to cover such medical procedures, such as coverage for an abortion and transgender health care?
Yes, and yes. These are issues that are of paramount importance, particularly to people in this room. I have two daughters. There are a lot of women in my life, but those two are pretty special. And I want to be here tonight to make sure that I stand up for their rights to maintain their own bodily autonomy. And women's rights are on the table. They're under attack right now, and we need to stand up and defend those rights. And also beyond women's rights, in addition to that, the attack on women's rights takes the form of Supreme Court decisions impeding the right to privacy. And that's going to affect beyond even women. It'll affect the rest of us as well as they roll back even rights to birth control, the rights to marry whom you choose, either whether across races or across sexualities. So there are a lot that's at stake right now, and I want to stand up for those rights and make sure that when we impose those rights or when we make those rights firm, that they're accessible to everyone for appropriate fines.
Please pass the mic to your left.
Yes and yes. So again, as a teacher, this is something that I teach my kids about, how we can be kind and inclusive. And the fact that the Republican Party and also the Supreme Court is trying to undermine people's basic human rights is despicable. The Dobbs radical decision needs to be overturned, and that needs to be overturned legislatively. So what I propose is repealing the Hyde Amendment. I also propose making sure that we codify Roe v. Wade into federal law. We need to do everything in our power to protect women in reproductive rights. Abortion is health care, and I will fight for that tooth and nail at the federal level.
My answer is yes and yes. I'm the only candidate here that not only has spoken with my vote twice in the General Assembly. In 2019 we passed and codified Roe versus Wade, but also just this May we did pass the Equality Act coverage as well to people that have not access to abortion because they're in Medicaid. But I'm the only one that have said I have been vulnerable to tell my story. I face fertility issues, and as a Catholic myself, I face a lot of hatred in my community for the vote that I casted. I will continue to have that strong voice because I believe it and because my daughter deserves that right, and I want to make sure that she's proud of her mom as a woman and as a mom that is fighting for the rights.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. So I said yes and yes to both questions. I can tell you that I'm very concerned that right now we're losing rights. Women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and we don't know where things are going to stop. I believe that right now, unfortunately, we're at a place in which my daughter could have less rights than I did, and that shouldn't be that way. There were so many women that fought so hard to make the gains that we did to make sure that we had abortion rights in this country. And we have to fight until we codify this at the federal level. There are states right now passing legislation in which a doctor have to court their lawyer before they make a medical decision, and that is wrong.
Thank you. Please pass.
Yes and yes. I mean, when it comes to women's rights, no politician should ever tell a woman what's best for her body. And no insurance company should ever tell a woman what level of care she deserves, right? That is a choice between a woman and her doctor. And that's why the Dobbs decision is an attack on women's rights. It's an attack on my daughter's rights. And we cannot have true equality in this country until we have reproductive freedom for all. And that's why, as your representative, I will fight tirelessly until our daughters and granddaughters have the same rights as their mothers and grandmothers. And I won't rest until Roe v. Wade is the law of the land once again.
So I think 90% of us are going to say yes and yes to this question, primarily because we're Democrats. But one of the interesting things here is when it leaked out, right, that Roe v. Wade was going to be reversed, Rhode Island had a unique opportunity for our state legislatures to literally call a meeting and have it codified immediately for it to be on the ballot. We had an opportunity that wasn't taken. So we need representation that is in fact proactive. We need representation when it comes to a woman's right. We have had many men stand and champion for us. I think it's time that a woman be able to speak on their uterus, be able to speak on the rights that they have. And we have a lot of representation in other spaces, but I think this is one that a woman should be able to speak on.
Well, like you said, 99% will say yes, yes. I believe, and my records show, we fight in the State House to pass the abortion right for women to have the choice to choose. And let me tell you, it's not easy because I represent a district that's very conservative. And they were going to the State House to say to me, so you vote in favor of the abortion, we vote you out. I'm still here because I stand for my value, and I think women have the right to choose, and nobody, like they said in my previous, we don't have to wait for a politic to be telling you what to do with your body. That's between you, the doctor, and your family to make that decision. And definitely, we have to fight. We need somebody who has the record to fight for women's rights, and that's me. Thank you.
Yes and yes as well. I certainly want to take this opportunity to thank the lawmakers that are on this panel, and certainly the activists and folks loudly who have made sure to act here in Rhode Island. And I would hope that if I had the opportunity to serve in Congress, that I, on the federal level, can make sure that we stand firmly for pro-choice values, for reproductive freedom, for bodily autonomy, and for folks to be able to live their authentic lives. And so I am wholly I think, in unity with folks on this panel, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to act in Congress.
Absolutely, on both fronts. Reproductive rights are human rights, and for the right to abortion to be meaningful, you need to have material access to it. And so I'm incredibly grateful to everyone in this room who came together and fought to pass the EACA this year. We need to pass that at the federal level. But we need to be really clear-eyed about what that's going to take. Right? We didn't get to this point that we are now overnight. The far right has spent decades building a comprehensive strategy to take over the courts, to use other minoritarian structures, gerrymandering, etc., to take away these rights. And if we're gonna fight back, the Democratic Party needs to be just as focused, just as urgent, just as, to be frank, ruthless about the importance of this, because this is a life and death battle, and we need to act like it.
Somebody said it would be 90%. I will say this, every abortion is a tragedy. I saw what we were discussing in 1973 when Roe v. Wade was enacted, and we hadn't even taken up the subject, let alone resolved it. I agree with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said the Roe v. Wade decision was a terrible mistake for our country. It put off an issue that needed to be talked about. It does need to be talked about. I don't think you want any bills out of Washington. If I'm in Washington, my thinking is we probably don't need any new legislation. Think long and hard before you advocate for new legislation. It might not be what you want.
Okay, we're going to go to a real quick question. If you'll hold on to the mic, you get to be first on this one, and then please pass the mic to the right. Who is your favorite fictional character? Answer and then pass it quickly, please.
Of course, Mickey Mouse.
Okay.
He's the guy that prints all our money.
My favorite book is Catch-22. Captain Yossarian is a real hero.
Wow, this is tough. Well, inspired by a recent web video, I would say Josh Lyman from The West Wing.
For me, Mulan, did she fight for the women to have the right to be in the army at that time?
Belle, because she liked books, and she didn't need a boy to be happy.
I'm going to say Moana, since it's at the top of my head and we watched it last night.
But there's a character in the Barbie movie, can't remember the name, but she gives a monologue about women's issues in what we face in society that I think we're going to be quoting that for years to come.
I do believe Wonder Woman because we believe that women really have a voice at the table that could do everything, and as a working mom, I really feel like moms could do everything, but women especially could get things done, and we need representation at the table, so Wonder Woman.
Well, I have to say Harry Potter, otherwise my fourth graders will kill me, so I'm just going to go with that one here.
I'll go with Tom Sawyer because he was clever enough to let other people have things his way.
Great. Okay, the next question is going to go to Mr. Burbrick to begin, and we will pass the microphone to the left this way. Mr. Burbrick, here is the third question. What approach do you support to achieve universal, comprehensive, and affordable health care?
You know, I'll start off with saying no Rhode Islander, no American, regardless of how much money you make, regardless of which gender you identify with, regardless of where you live, should ever be denied any medical service or any reproductive health care. And, you know, if you live in a place like Texas, right, a woman is denied an abortion. And she's denied an abortion despite a fetus being not viable or her life being in danger. And all because a doctor can still detect a heartbeat. And this is actually a real story, a story that happened in Texas from a young woman. And she developed an infection. And
please pass the mic. Thank you. To the left. To the left, please. Thank you.
So I'd say that when the Affordable Care Act passed, it was actually a benefit. I was in college at the time, and I was kicked off of my mom's health insurance. But to be quite honest, I would say Medicaid for all would be the thing that I would champion. I speak to that personally because spending a semester abroad while studying in France, I got really ill, and the family that I was staying with rushed me to their private doctor, and it cost me €1. €1, and that was 2010. I had to have emergency surgery because of a lump that was caught in my breast. I had to take out a 401k loan in order to cover that surgery. So Medicare for all.
Thank you. Send request. I will do Medicaid for all. I think I'm very surprised that we are the most powerful country and the richest country in the world, and there's so many people still dying because they don't have insurance. And it's unbelievable. A young man died not that long ago because he didn't have health insurance, and he was 20 years old who had a car accident. He refused to go to the doctor because he was afraid to get that bill in the mail until the parents had to pay for. It's unbelievable that somebody had to stay in a marriage because they're afraid if they leave their husband or their wife, they're not going to have health insurance. I think it's something we should have health insurance for everybody, and we should have vision, dental, and everybody, because Obamacare was a good one, but not enough.
One of my proudest achievements in public service was working on the team that helped to implement the Affordable Care Act. I got down to the community level and working with local elected officials to help enroll people, to work in states to expand Medicaid, to do all that we could to expand access as much as possible. Now, under President Biden, and certainly we were able to benefit from this during the American Rescue Plan, we expanded access as well, but also lowered costs. I want to dramatically expand Medicaid, take away some of the state's role in controlling that, and do it as fast as possible.
Healthcare is a right for everyone, not a privilege for those who can afford it. That's not how it's treated in this country right now. It's treated as an opportunity for corporations to make money off of our injuries and illness. I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race that has a long record of fighting for Medicare for all. Every year I was in the state legislature, I introduced legislation to create a single-payer system at the state level. I was attacked for that in 2018 when I ran statewide, but I'm always going to keep fighting to take on Big Pharma, to take on the health insurance executives, to create healthcare for everyone. I think pragmatically, our best path to make that actually happen is by lowering the Medicare eligibility age. As soon as we have congressional control again, Democrats need to fight to lower it to 55, then to 45. We build a constituency of folks who are bought into this, and that's going to help us continue to move it down and down until it covers every American.
I think it's very important for us here in particular to understand why we're Democrats. And there are going to be people that are going to say, why are you a Democrat? Well, there are some reasons. We've got Social Security to protect. We believe in it. We believe in universal health care. We believe that climate change is a real issue and we're not going to duck it. A lot of legislators that I know, by the way, I need to say, this is the time to say it, I spent 12 years in the legislature, a group of 8 years and 4 years. I was deputy majority leader for 4 of those years. But if you look at some of the bills that certain legislators have put in, there might be 30 pages. Read them. There's nothing in the 30 pages. Those bills cannot be passed. The deficiency is that we don't focus on it and solve the real problems.
Thank you.
Healthcare is and should be a universal human right. One of the biggest problems in our country is that people fall through the cracks. And what Democrats are good at is helping the people who fall through the cracks. That's what Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid were all about. So what we need to do is to protect those folks. My own personal experience is that my wife had a pre-existing condition and we couldn't get health insurance. And the ACA passed just in the nick of time to keep us from falling through the cracks. So that's what we really need to do, is to have Medicare expanded to all who need it and all who want it, regardless of age, all the way through, so that no one is left without the kind of protection that they need to get universal health care.
Healthcare is absolutely a right and not a privilege, and that's why we need to pass Medicare for all. Social Security is also something that we need to protect tooth and nail. The price gouging that's occurring with our pharmaceutical industry needs to be held to account. It's why our campaign isn't accepting any corporate PAC money or any fossil fuel money, because we want to make sure that we are beholden to the people that we represent. And there's so many people out there who are literally a catastrophe away, a medical catastrophe away from bankruptcy. And I have so many stories being on the ground as a councilman, helping people who deal with these healthcare decisions every single day, and that's what I'm going to do if I get to Washington.
Medicare for all is and should be a priority for everyone. I would say that for me, it is very apparent that protecting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid is what we need to do right now under the Republican-led Congress. But one thing that I would like to say is that at the state level, I was able to pass legislation, or actually include it in the budget, that cover all kids. Because everyone, regardless of the zip code, that they should have access to health care. One of the things that I am very proud to say is that the healthcare providers here, from the day that we are born to the day that they have the most difficult times, are taking care of us. Our healthcare workers need that support as well. And my parents go through this, and I'm very grateful for them as well, so that trickles down.
Thank you. I believe that Medicare for all should be the law that we should have. I'm someone that does have a pre-existing condition. I have experienced myself how tough it is when you have to switch job and you have to wonder whether the health insurance that you're going to get is going to cover the condition that you have. But even more traumatic for me is whenever I'm able to get my treatment, I cannot help but think about those individuals that have the same condition as me, and they don't have that option.
Thank you. The next question is going to go to Mr. Regenberg. We are going to continue to pass the mic to the left. This is a longer question, and it has two parts. Given the recent Supreme Court rulings on affirmative action and the ongoing attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the country, please explain to us how you view the role of affirmative action in addressing historical disparities and promoting diversity in education and employment, and how will your view on diversity, equity, and inclusion inform your policies and politics and platform in Congress?
The recent Supreme Court decision on affirmative action is an absolute disgrace, and one of the many, many reasons that we desperately need court reform. Affirmative action has been such a critical program for expanding opportunities, for making everyone stronger and better by creating more diverse college campuses and other spaces. And it is incumbent on whoever wins this seat to be full steam ahead in fighting to reform the Supreme Court so that we can overturn decisions like that and to create the kind of policies that will allow us to make sure that folks have the opportunities, that we have a system that is actively working to deny them.
Thank you. You may have noticed that I'm by far the oldest one here, and that gives me the insight of having been around when the issue first came up. We thought about it, we talked about it, it had its upside and its downside. It was the right thing, we did it, and it's had a good history. Where it goes from here, that's another question. But one thing we have to keep in mind is we talk about equity, we talk about equality, we talk about equal opportunity, and I'm not going to pretend that that exists in this country, because it doesn't. There's some things we can do about that. Some of the basic democratic values, healthcare, education, we can work slowly towards solving those problems.
Please pass.
Thank you. Affirmative action is something that's a priority for our country, and the recent decision is in fact a travesty. The institution where I work at Yale Law School, we're proud to say that we have 54% people of color and marginalized people in our incoming class. And that's needed to make up for the mistakes of the past. We need to level the playing field. The thing that breaks my heart about it is the lost human potential. Because you have all these young people who have great talent, great ambition, great drive, who don't get to realize their full potential because they're held back by not being admitted to some of the finer educational institutions of our country. And it's that lost potential that's most difficult, because we as a society are better off when every single boy and girl achieves their full potential. That's by definition what makes us a richer, better country, when everybody achieves what they can achieve.
The Supreme Court ruling was absolutely despicable. And you know what? It's my story. You know, growing up in the city of Providence, I actually remember this. It was then Congressman Cicilline who helped me get into the gifted program in Nathaniel Green Middle School, Providence Public Schools, which allowed me to go to Wheeler, which eventually allowed me to go to Brown for undergrad and grad school. What the Supreme Court is doing to undermine our basic human rights needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed wholeheartedly. There should be no reason why the Supreme Court continues to strip our rights, and it's exactly why we need ethics reform. We need to unpack the court of these Supreme Court justices that are led by MAGA Republicans, and we need to do everything that we can to hold them accountable.
Affirmative action is something that I hold dear to my heart. As a chair of the Senate Education Committee, every legislation that comes through my committee, I have to say that I see through the lens of equity. Why? Because I do understand what it is to live these experiences. Coming from Colombia and having education being the equalizer for my life, I want to make sure that other kids and other students have the same opportunity. And then so you need someone that understands firsthand, that have done the work at the state level legislatively, and that would speak up to a Supreme Court that is definitely not doing justice for all of us. What I say is, at this time and moment, we need to make sure that we send someone that have that experience, that have done the work, and that is going to continue speaking up for it.
Affirmative action have to be protected. And this is again what I was mentioning about earlier, that little by little we're losing rights and we're going back. I believe that we have to make sure that we are fighting back against the Republicans that are trying to chip away little by little to our rights. When it comes to affirmative action, we have to make sure that those Ivy League institutions give a fair chance and opportunity to people of color to be able to attend and to be able to have their dreams come true. And I have worked with the students trying to get into one of those schools, and it's not easy.
Please pass.
The Supreme Court is a tragedy, and it's a tragedy for our youth and those who are historically live in underserved communities. And you know, as a career educator, I fundamentally believe that equal access to high quality education, public education, is fundamental to a strong democracy. And you know, I can't tell you how many parents, students, teachers have shared their stories with me across our district, especially in STEM education. And you know, where there's a significant lack of funding, a significant lack of critical opportunities for women and for folks of color who don't have the same opportunities. And see the thing, I'm going to stop right there.
Donnie, could you please repeat the question and apologize?
Sure, I'd be glad to. It is long, so sure, I'm glad to do it. Given the recent Supreme Court rulings on affirmative action and the ongoing attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the country, please explain how you view the role of affirmative action in addressing historical disparities and promoting diversities in education and employment, and how will your perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion inform your politics, policy, and platform in Congress?
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure I captured that because it talks about employment. I've heard a lot about education and talking about equity and inclusion. And I've heard a little bit, kind of blame on the Republican side. I mean, this is a person issue. It's not a party issue. It's a person issue. And I think we need to be honest about that. I think it's even more so evident in the space that we're in here for the seat that we're seeking, right? And if we're being candid, and I like to be candid, we don't have equity and inclusion in this current seat. And so for the folks who talk about and who have answered this question on how their views would be reformed on it, if anything, the essence of affirmative action would say that any one of these candidates that's already checked that box would support another candidate of color, someone who's not represented here, and provide the resources in backing that. That would be a sign of equity and showing affirmative action.
Well, as a woman of color, it's very hard for me to talk about this because we get discriminated in many other ways. And I think we discriminate so many thousands of children in Rhode Island who didn't get the education that they deserve. And for us, Rhode Island never sent somebody of color to Washington. Not even talk about the same issue we're talking right now. We need somebody of color who represent Rhode Island, especially of women. Then I agree with my colleagues over here that see, you really want equally, and it's some people who are sitting in here who come from connected communities, who are connected political, money, and other ways, should be supporting other people. Thank you.
I'm, like others, heartbroken by the Supreme Court's ruling. Like my colleague down the way, this is my story. This is why I've been able to serve at the heights of government, has been because of government being active and reaching the high ideals that have been put forward for our country. And so I'm disheartened, but I want to go and fight these fights. In government, I help build teams, diverse teams that reflected this country, and it would be a big priority in whatever way I would be able to legislatively to fight against this reversal of what was a big part of America's progress over the last few decades.
Thank you, Mr. Amo. I'm going to ask you to hold on to the mic to be ready to answer this next short question. Please keep it short. We're running on time here. Here we go. Ready? Do you support term limits for Congress, yes or no? And if yes, how many terms?
Yes, I am not certain on the number, but I would be in the 3 to 5 window in the House, in the number of terms, and 2 to 4 in the Senate.
Please pass. To the left? To the right, I'm sorry, to the right. Sorry.
Yes, I do, and I think six term would be enough.
Thank you, please.
Yes, 3 terms, that's 6 years in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, that's 12 years.
Thank you.
Yes, 12 and 12.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but it depends on how it's implemented, because I went through that in the Providence City Council and learned some lessons from it.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not sure of how many terms, but I support the term limits.
Yes, I believe 12 to 18 years, so 6 terms in the House and 3 terms in the Senate.
Yes, and 12 years sounds about right to me.
We've got to talk about it, but I want to caution you. Sometimes people throw out ideas as a smokescreen. This is not going to solve any of your problems. We have procedural problems in the Rhode Island House and Senate and at the Congressional level too.
Yes, I'd be supportive, open to different proposals. 12 years sounds about right. I do think corporate money in politics gets at more of the problems that I think term limits are trying to address, though.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm looking at our time, and I have a lot more questions, but we want each candidate to be able to, we're going to begin with Lieutenant Governor Matos, and then we're going to go to the right. You have 60 seconds to give us a summary and the reasons why you think we should support you for Congress in CD1. We'll begin with Ms. Matos and then go to the right.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about my campaign for Congress. I want to ask all of you that are watching this at home and those that are here to support my campaign for Congress. This is the time in which we have to make sure we send someone to Congress that's going to be fighting for the rights of the people, that is going to be fighting to protect a woman's right to choose, to make sure that our children, our daughters, don't have less rights than we did. This is the time to make sure that we send someone that's going to fight for gun safety legislation that's going to protect our children. And we don't have to be worried about, is today when I'm going to get the call that something happened at their school or either playing outside in the park. And this is the time in which we have to make sure that we're fighting until we are able to pass the legislation that's going to ban assault weapons from our streets. And it has to pass at the federal level. Thank you.
Please pass to the right.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Sandra Cano and I'm running for Congress because I deeply care to help people through policy. I have the experience through all the levels of government, from the school committee to the city council to the state senate. I'm the current chair of the education committee, and my financial background as well as my public service makes me the most qualified candidate here today. I would like to say that making policy and advocate for working families is really my passion. Coming from Colombia to the healthiest economy and healthiest democratic values in the United States have been the honor of my life. I want to transfer my passion to make sure that I make all of those values that I have from the Democratic Party really work for the people of Rhode Island in Congress. And I hope that you give me your trust and the opportunity to represent you, because you will have someone that is fierce, bold, and that knows the struggles firsthand of the working families of Rhode Island and want to make sure that makes change and bring infrastructure to our state.
Please
Thank
pass.
you.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen and to engage in this forum. I want to thank my fellow candidates for also being here. My name is John Gonsalves. Again, I'm a two-term city councilman, and I've been effective, responsive, and reliable at the local level. I've been the lead sponsor on dozens and dozens of pieces of legislation. I know how to get things done. And that's exactly what I'm going to do if you send me to Washington. We need bold leadership to go out there and fight for the values that we believe in. It's why our campaign isn't accepting any corporate PAC money. It's why we're not accepting any fossil fuel money, because we want to put people first and we want to put people over politics. We have been in this race. We are building a multi-generational and multi-racial coalition, and I hope that you'll join us at johngforcongress.com so we can fight for our children, families, and seniors in Washington. Thank you all for being here.
My name is Doug Carlson, and I'd be proud to represent Rhode Island in the United States Congress. I'm sorry that tonight we didn't have an opportunity or time to address either gun safety or affordable housing, because I hear every day in the 1st District that those are issues high on people's minds. And when I did work in Congress as legislative director for Joseph P. Kennedy II back in the 1990s, we got teeth put into the Community Reinvestment Act to drive a lot more capital, a lot more mortgage money into neighborhoods that had been historically discriminated against and redlined. And that was a way of tangibly solving the problem of affordable housing in Boston and in Massachusetts more generally, and across the whole country. That's what we need, that kind of decisive action in Rhode Island. I have experience in the House of Representatives, I have experience as a teacher, I've built businesses, and I have the right kind of experience to not only do a great job for you in Washington, but also to bring resources into Rhode Island to help fight climate change by building sustainable businesses and investing in renewable energy. And so I'd like to humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. I have been advised to differentiate myself from the other candidates because there's so many of them. So I'll tell you a couple things about me. I've served 12 years in the legislature, 8 years in the 1st District, 4 in the 2nd, and I also point out I served 4 years as a deputy majority leader. A lot of reforms happened the year that we turned over the speakership in 1975. I've served under 6 speakers. I think I know how they operate, how they work. As far as myself, I am a home builder. If you want affordable housing, don't elect me, because if I get elected, I won't be able to build any. But I've built plenty. I built the first solar house in Rhode Island, and I worked with other builders. We built at least 100, saved millions of gallons of fuel. That was many, many years ago. I've got skin in the game as far as that goes. I care about it. It's real. One of the complaints I hear from a lot of my friends is politicians get elected and then they don't do anything. Well, that won't be me.
Please pass. Thank you.
Thanks again so much to the Women's Caucus for putting on this great event. We've got big problems in this country, and big problems require big solutions. Those aren't going to be easy to achieve, especially when we're up against the kind of entrenched interests that we know we are. But being in rooms like this with all of you, it gives me real hope. You know, I know that we can come together and we can take on Big Pharma and the health insurance executives to pass Medicare for all, to make healthcare a right for everyone, not a privilege for those who can afford it. I know that we can take on big oil to win a livable future for our kids. I know that we can build an economy that works for all of us, not just the CEOs and bosses at the very top. But it's not going to be easy. It takes organizing. and movement building, the kind of work that groups like the Women's Caucus does every day. And it takes that work from our congressional leaders too. We need more than just one more Democratic vote. We need leaders like Nick and Cicilline who can organize and bring people together and have a record of winning progressive policy change. That's the work I've been doing in Rhode Island for many years, and I'd be honored to do it alongside all of you in Washington.
I'm so honored to be here, and I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. I'm just a poor kid from Pawtucket who had an opportunity to work at the heights of government, and I'm running because I want to use the experience that I've built over the last couple decades to be effective as a congressperson for people here from day one. I have had the opportunity to affect major issues around this country, help communities heal, but also invest in the future and take advantage of things like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, and so many things to help communities get on their feet and move forward. I'm running because I'm an optimist. I truly believe that tomorrow can be better than today. And I want to take that passion, that energy, that commitment to Rhode Island and to serve you. So I encourage you to go to my website, gabeamo.com. Please sign up. I look forward to Election Day.
Well, I'm Anna Quesada, and I'm running for Congress because I'm a fighter. I'm a regular Rhode Island. I'm not connected politically. I'm not rich. I'm just a mom who was a welfare mom, who was a factory worker, who made Rhode Island represent working family in Rhode Island, and that's what we are. And I will fight for Rhode Island to make sure that we get affordable housing, to make sure that we have Medicare for all, to make sure that we have our elderly Medicaid safe, to make sure that our children is safe when they go to the mall, when they go to school, when they go to the park. We want to make sure that our family that represent. I'm a regular Rhode Island. I will fight for you, I promise. And I ask you for the opportunity to represent you on September 5th. I'm asking for your vote. And give me that opportunity to be your representative in Washington. Thank you. And thank you for having this forum to this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Stephanie Beauty. Today we have a unique opportunity to shatter a glass ceiling. We also have a unique opportunity to do something different, to try something bold, to try something refreshing, to try something that we're not used to, a government that actually works for you. A government that when you send an elected official to work, they don't come back with excuses and blame the other party. They in fact deliver results. I'm not here for clickbaiting. I'm not here to gaslight you into emotion. That doesn't do anything for your paycheck. It doesn't do anything when someone tells you about jobs, but you need 2 or 3 jobs to keep the light bill on. It doesn't do anything about you not being able to cover your costs or even childcare. That doesn't do anything for you. It hasn't worked for me as a working person. And so I've left my job in technology to go to work, because that's what I'm good at. I'm good at working. And with me, by your side, know this, no one works harder than a beauty. Send a beauty to Rhode Island.
Well, thank you so much to the caucus, and thank you to everyone who's joining us both here and virtually. And we are in a defining moment in our nation's history. And our economy isn't working for working class families here in Rhode Island. Women across our country have lost their fundamental right to choose. And Rhode Islanders, like so many Americans, have lost trust in government. And so I made the decision 3.5 months ago to resign from 15 years of federal service to run for Congress. Without a paycheck, without generational wealth, without political connections, and without accepting corporate PAC money, because I fundamentally believe that I have an obligation to continue serving and fighting for you. And that's what I'm going to do as your representative in Congress. And it would be my greatest honor to earn your vote on September 5th and to serve you in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to turn to our audience. You have been amazingly disciplined. I know a couple times you were just urging, right? I know that. But we wouldn't have been able to do as much as we could in this time without that. So please now take all that pent-up energy and thank you for joining us. also want to thank our candidates. I know that in a large race like this with a lot of people, there's a real urge to kind of do some things that wouldn't have been helpful. But you all disciplined yourselves to stick to the issues and to answer the issues and respect the voters, knowing that the only way they can make an informed decision, if they really learn who you are and what you stand for. And thank you all for doing that tonight. We are so grateful to you. Let me just remind everyone that as soon as we're dismissed in just a couple of seconds, I'm going to ask us all to exit the library. That includes our candidates. There is room outside to be able to chat with people and do that. I apologize. It's just that, again, we want to thank the East Providence Library and their staff. Thank you. They have been so helpful, and we really appreciate their help. Thank you for those of you who have been watching us online on Facebook. We appreciate all of you, and good luck to all of you, and please keep the substantive debate going. Thank you. Good night.
For the folks who've hung on, we're going to go outside, and we're going to try and keep the love alive. So stay with us. And by the way, we've got a poll running on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. Tongue planted firmly in cheek, but maybe not. Gonna walk outside here, see if we get a few questions answered. Congratulations, very well run. We're live right now, but congratulations, because Medicaid for all was a big issue. So the spin room, if you will, is going to be outside.
You guys got to be in one line. How are we going to zigzag like this?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Very eloquent.
Literature. Thank you. Got it?
So right now we're outside the East Providence Public Library. Let's see if we can catch up with a few candidates.
For that, for like 20 years or so, basically building and founding. Facebook. For that, I'm sure it's 30. For that.
But some people don't have.
Right. Yeah, sure. Then the CEO of a couple of companies.
Excuse me. Are you planning on posting this afterwards?
It's actually streaming live right now.
And then we'll be able to watch later as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you need Facebook? Do you need Facebook?
No, it's actually going to be up on our YouTube. And if you go to our website, we're going to post it on our website.
Okay, perfect.
And you're with which campaign?
Have you picked one yet?
We're kind of live right now, so I don't want you to... It's okay. No, you're not on cam. You're here as a voter educating yourself.
Okay. On the white tours?
Okay. No, it's great stuff. This is why you have sessions like this, where people had to answer real questions. And Reverend Anderson was spot on, and she talked about people, candidates being disciplined. None of the foolishness. So there was a lot of respect for the voters tonight. Wait a minute, the Rhode Island paper of record is just walking by?
What's going on? How you doing?
Good. We're here live. And again, it's refreshing to see the Rhode Island taking No, hey. Folks are streaming out, and we're going to get a couple of conversations going here.
You must be Pat Ford.
I am.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I listen to you all on the radio.
Oh, God bless you.
Back and forth with all.
Did you have fun tonight? What did you think of this?
It's interesting. But I wish they'd let us ask a question.
You know, it's tough. I think the library's...
I'm a military veteran. I want to know about what Tommy Tuberville's doing.
You know what? I've actually reached out to 2 candidates on the whole Marine Commandant issue. And
We haven't had a boss. First time in 150.
Oh, no,
I fought in Vietnam. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. We do not have a boss.
The only media outlet in Rhode Island that has the recording of the ceremony of the change of power, if you will, with the Marines to the temporary commandant was us. So
Really?
you can watch it live.
I
Here.
know there was a temporary.
There is a temporary.
I know.
But that's the problem.
I'm in the Marine Corps League of Rhode Island, so I know that.
My contact information there. Reach out to me. I'll send you a couple of links.
Nice to meet you.
We cover.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
How's it going?
Good. Mwah.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
We're here to do this. Are you working on it? Now we're live. So are you working on a campaign or? I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Interesting week. So anyway, we're doing a poll, and we hope you'll take a look at it. Again, tongue planted firmly in cheek. Candidates are...
Are you able to be down, sir?
We are live right now, so come on over in front of me. All right, that's perfect. You're going to have to speak in an outside voice because our microphone cable is broken. But why don't you introduce yourself?
Walter Burbrick, candidate for CD1.
A little louder.
I can't hear you.
A little louder.
Walter Burbrick, candidate for CD1. And I'm a career public service, 10 years in the Navy, 15 years as an educator at the Naval War College, which took me down to the State Department and Pentagon, and it would be my greatest honor to represent you in Congress and fight for you in Congress.
All right, we're going to get you on the air because we're going to talk foreign policy, hopefully within the next week or so.
That'd be great.
And I'm fascinated by your perspective, as someone who worked at the Naval War College, who's got real, boots on the ground, really legitimate boots on the ground experience. But for right now, where can people find you on the web? And again, we're outside, so I just have to ask you that.
Sure, yeah, it's Walter Burbrick, BERBRICK.com, and you can find stuff on our bio, our issues page that lays out our 3 big issues, which are rising costs, rising division, and rising seas, the impacts of climate change. So I encourage you to take a look, walterburbrick.com, and again, look forward to having the honor of earning your vote this September 5th.
Did you enjoy tonight?
It was awesome. It was great. It was a good chance to meet folks and get our ideas out there.
I think when we rate all the different performances, yours is going to come out as one of the strong surprises, not because you're not capable, but I don't know if a lot of people have met you yet, and that's why we have a campaign, and that's why we have events like this. So we're spot on. You were on point as far as what your beliefs are, and that's why we do this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We'll be talking soon.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
Stephanie?
So Nancy Thomas sings your praises.
We're live right now, just so you can.
Oh.
No, say it louder. You can say it again.
And write your congressman and tell him. Good job.
Oh, you having fun with this?
Yeah, I mean, this
Come in
is
front of the
great.
camera. Let people see you. It's all good.
I mean, this is wonderful. Democrat Rhode
here.
Island democracy in action.
I thought tonight was remarkable because it was such a well-disciplined event.
No, yeah, people.
They respected the timekeeper.
People were civil,
right?
They were informative,
right?
They had an opportunity to use the time, however, whether it was effective or not. But it was good. It was good, informative policy.
I hope the rest of it. There's a foreign policy going on. We're doing a series, by the way. Where, in fact, I'm going to be here tonight. I'm going to challenge every candidate to come on the air. Mr. Carlson has already done it, to have about a half-hour conversation, an overview, if you will, of foreign policy, because what appears to be missing right now in this conversation is a recognition that this is a federal race,
right,
and we are at war.
Right.
So we're going to be introducing that, and I invite you to listen and comment.
But also talk about older adults, because a lot of them don't get into the real issues that have been challenging people over 60, the elders. We suffered significantly during COVID, and that's still the case for many individuals. So, but this is good. I'm not a candidate, so please get somebody else on screen that is. And
Okay.
thank you for what you do.
Fair enough. Mr. Dickinson, come on over. You got to come over. You got to come over on this side of the
I just
camera.
want to make sure that you don't forget my name, and it's very easy to do. And you know,
You and I have hugged it out, argued it out for 15 years now.
You know, and one of the great things about being as old as I am is I've probably forgotten all those arguments. And
Listen, you actually remember my name, so I'll take that as a...
I'm an old man, as you know. I have 35,000 file folders, and everyone has a name on it, and some of them have information. And when somebody says Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I got to think, who's Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Yeah,
Somebody says, who's Pat Ford? I got to think, who's Pat Ford?
I say
and
that every day.
Luckily for me, it comes, but that is only short. So if you're going to elect me to Congress, you better do it this year. I'm not sure I'll be able to handle it next year.
Well, listen, I'm going to put this out there and give you one of my cards. We're going to be having, we've already done it with candidate Carlson. We're inviting, it's kind of a challenge, everyone to spend a half hour with me to just discuss foreign policy.
Not a bad idea. And by the way, probably my best interview in whatever it was I was running for a few years ago was your one. And the thing you said that I remember the most is, I don't care how much money you have, I want to know what you're going to do. It's about time you know more people ask that question.
Coalition policy is very straightforward. We don't handicap elections. I'm not interested in your fundraising. I'm not interested in your polling. I'm not interested if you're going to win. I want to know why you should. That's all.
That's the right question. Why can't anybody else figure that out except you?
I don't know. Keep
asking it.
You know, in this field, there seems to be a real appetite for people like tonight. It was a well-disciplined, well-run event. Respect for the clock, respect for the candidates. The crowd was civil and clearly engaged. That's a very good thing. So there's reason to be optimistic.
Well, I hope you're right. I think that one of the problems is that, I don't know about the other candidates, they may have had their points. I got half of what I had to say in every case. I never got to say that the Army spent $100,000 teaching me to shoot, and that's a factor, or that it should be, and who you vote for.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
No,
or that the Inflation Reduction Act is a fraud, because that's not what it is. Well, stuff like that. The thing that drives me crazy and makes me want to get so mad at politicians, they're lying to you all the time. By the way, I don't know if you're on the air or not.
You are.
I'm not going to lie to my constituents or anybody else.
I'm a CD1 resident.
I'm going to tell them the truth.
I'm a CD1 resident. And I will just say this. I asked David Cicilline, and I have a cordial relationship with him. I think he's done a lot of good. But I asked him specifically, and when the Inflation Reduction Act was being talked about, wouldn't in fact the injection of billions of dollars into our economy in fact cause inflation?
Are you the only economist in the whole press corps or the whole political spectrum?
Well, Governor, I've challenged
McConnell. You're the only guy that understands Keynesian economy in its full range.
It
turns out you are.
Well, Governor McKee admitted to me he's not an economist. The second round of questions, now you talk about...
His family owns an oil company and a construction company. I have a feeling they've got some people that know economics in this.
Well, I asked him specifically, as he was on his little bit of a tirade, if you will, about rising interest rates. And I asked him a couple of things over a couple of days. I said, first of all, isn't all this excessive government spending a direct fuel for inflation, which then can only be moderated by rising interest rates.
Which means destroying people and the economy.
Right. Then I followed up after he had gone on this tirade about rising interest rates, and I said, have you taken time to consider the fate of senior citizens who, by definition, many of them, for whatever money they have, they can really only invest in fixed return, ultra-safe investments, for whom inflation has destroyed 20
That's
to, depending
exactly
on the,
right.
depending on the estimate, 20 to 30% of their accrued wealth that they will never have the opportunity to make up. So if in fact, Governor McKee, aren't these interest rates beneficial to one sector of the economy, the one that relies on fixed income for their living?
And what did he say?
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, that may not be the answer to that question. Why are you the only person with a camera who understands that?
Listen, I've lived a life, that's all. You and I both, my friend. Good to see you.
Anyway, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. We'll be seeing each other again.
One of the great things about running is that you get to see some people.
There you
We're
go.
going to have a TV show. She might accept my challenge.
A TV
A debate. A debate.
Okay. Who's
You know,
the moderator?
by the way, it shouldn't be on.
You should get
WPRO.
Gene Valicente.
Okay, well, he's good. He's good.
No.
She's
I
the
know
best
someone.
candidate,
I know
and
someone.
she's the best candidate in terms of presentation and articulate. I want to debate the best candidate, not the second best candidate.
There was some
and
guy.
By the way, I can't say that all the time because people are going to hear me and they're going to say, "Wait a minute, you already said that." I didn't.
I was going to say, there was a guy who was moderator, interestingly enough, given his background, for Latino Public Radio for, I think, 6 different debates. Me.
Oh, so you want to be the debate?
He asks the right questions,
So
in my opinion.
Well, I'd be open to that.
I think we all know Ronaldo. He's a force in Rhode Island politics. I moderated debates, both treasurer sets of candidates, primary and then general election.
A year ago.
Yeah, lieutenant governor, and also one of my favorite ones was the attorney general.
Julie, he works on a campaign. You're not going to convince us. It's okay. No.
Good to see you again.
What are the other people? Julie, you are working. Don't listen to this guy. Don't listen to this guy.
Email me.
Julie, don't listen.
Email me your contact information tonight or tomorrow. All right? All right, buddy. All right, you're live on camera right now, so. All right, so first of all, I'm going to ask you so that I get it right, because we talked in passing a few times. Your name, it's Stephanie?
Stephanie.
And then Butte?
No, it's Beauty.
Beauty, okay.
You can Google it. It's Beauty. I didn't make it up. It's Beauty.
All right. I caught, or I understood part of your speech at the Haitian event, which, by the way, we have live on our website, if you wanted to go check it out, because it was very powerful. I could tell people were moved by it. And you were one of really I think you may have been the only congressional candidate there, which speaks to me.
No, there was another person, but he didn't make the ballot.
He didn't make the ballot, right. So as far as right now, you were the only candidate who spoke to a very powerful issue affecting a big part of our Rhode Island family, which is Haitian Americans. So I'm going to ask you right now, and you can get back to me, sometime in the next few weeks, we're going to tentatively set sort of the end date is around August 10th. We're going to ask each of the candidates, one's already done it, to come in and talk foreign policy with me for about a half hour, 40 minutes. Just kind of
yes.
excellent. And for the people who, there are 1 or 2 people I can tell have already kind of shy about it, we will be telling the public who wouldn't come in.
Who was shy about foreign policy?
Well, shy about talking about it. I won't say, but I could tell certain congressional candidates aren't enthused about having that conversation. It's a critical part of the race that's largely, I want to say ignored, because that's a negative, but it hasn't really been
discussed,
embraced.
as it should be.
And
that and cybersecurity, AI, machine learning, all of those things, which one I would be very well astute to speak on, but even more so with foreign policy, I've traveled quite extensively in my career professionally.
I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit louder.
Sorry.
No, it's an outside voice kind of thing.
So I didn't want to shout, but I thought that a few things that haven't been discussed that are really important. One is foreign policy. I've traveled extensively in my professional career and my personal life. I've seen what it's like in Cuba as well as what it's like in Mumbai, so I can speak to that. Also, cyber risk, cybersecurity, machine learning, AI, what has that been doing to our state of our economy, and how are we protected? We haven't been open about discussing that for obvious reasons. I think it's the Achilles heel for about every other candidate. I've done it through my professional experience, but I think we should also discuss that.
Now, you did a semester abroad in France?
I did. I have a degree at URI with French, but I spent the semester living abroad in France, in Orléans.
Been there. Beautiful city. My wife's French. But she's from Brittany. Yeah. So, look forward to that. Now, again, I always want to give a candidate an opportunity for what we lovingly call shameless self-promotion, all right, which is to tell people how they can find out more about you. So, loud voice.
So, loud voice. My name is Stephanie Beauty. You can find out about me and my campaign at BEAUTEFORRI.com. That's beauty4ri.com. And what you'll see right now is the folks who are the most well-funded or politically connected, they're getting all of the airwaves. And that doesn't change what we really need, is to really hear from every single candidate and how they will work for Rhode Islanders. And so I really hope that you will take the time out, research every single person, and have an informed decision before you go into the ballot. It's more than name recognition. It's really about putting the right person in that office. And I believe I'm the right gal to do the job.
Thank you so very much. Did I give you one of these?
I did not.
All right. So have you or your campaign manager reach out to me sometime the next couple of days. We've got a couple of weeks. I understand you got a campaign to run. There's a lot going on, but we're trying to get people in before the first week of April. Of August.
Like April.
Yeah, it's...
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
And we'll talk soon.
Hello.
Aaron, can you give us 2 minutes? We're live. All right, so I've got to go higher on the camera. Here's a man that I've spent a fair amount of time on with picket lines. Old school picket lines, environmental picket lines. Someone, to his credit, who when he went away to college, and went away to law school, I should say, didn't forget and didn't come back on weekends and sometimes during the middle week to march on picket lines for environmental justice. So that's an important point because there are folks who are going to use this campaign as for opportunism, and then there's folks who have a consistent record. So that's as close as I can come to an endorsement.
Really
I got to be equal with everybody. There's a couple of great people in this race. What was your impression of tonight?
I thought that was a great...
A little bit loud because we're outside as well.
I thought that was a great forum. Lots of important substantive issues, and that was the first time we were all, physically together. So I hope it was a good opportunity for voters to hear about where folks stand and also the records. It's easy to say I support this thing, but to actually be able to talk about, and I've been there and I've been fighting on it and working towards it.
Does tonight prove that a lot of Rhode Islanders are actually interested in substance? I mean, you had an audience that was riveted, disciplined, focused, and you had candidates as a result were allowed to be disciplined and focused and articulate on issues. Is this the proof that we need to get away from what we call on our station outrage porn, to get away from the heated emotional crap that seems to take up the airwaves?
That's a really lovely way of framing it. I mean, for me, I've always thought you run a campaign on substance, right? You treat voters as the intelligent actors that they are. And I do think most people want to talk about serious issues and understand where folks are at and hear how the work that they're going to do is going to impact their real lives. And I think there's a lot of forces that push campaigns to kind of go lowest common denominator and be pushing for the soundbite or the mudslinging. And so, yeah, forums like this that provide an opportunity to actually really talk about issues. And they, as you said, they provide an opportunity to show that that's really what voters want. And so our campaign is going to continue to be treating voters intelligently. We don't do those crazy scammy emails. My team's always like, Aaron, the emails you write to your list are way too long. But I think people are interested in issues and they want to have real conversations, and that's how we're going to keep running our campaign for sure.
So we've already started this, and tonight specifically I came to not only just cover this, but reach out to the individual campaigns. We're trying to have a half-hour conversation with every candidate on foreign policy. Mr. Carlson was the first one up just because it was just timing. So we're going to invite you to that. We understand you got campaigns to run. We're going to try and do this over the next 2 or 3 weeks and handle some, I want to say, topside reviews of issues like Israel-Palestine, like Ukraine, and some of the nuances around that. Are you open to doing that with me?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, so I'll reach out. I'll give you another card. I know you got my contact. Have your campaign manager reach out to me, and let's set this up as soon as we can make the stars collide. Again, I know we understand. We're giving it a couple weeks, so we understand that there's a lot of commitments. There's other forums like this coming up.
And more coming online every day.
Well, you know what?
Got invited to 2 new ones today.
Well, and you know what? I think one of the products of the last gubernatorial election was the continued emergence of these forums, where folks understood that, for example, like the Progressive Women's Caucus, a powerful, newish force, but still a powerful force in Rhode Island social justice and politics. And so it's an opportunity for them to show people what they represent, and at the same time provide a valuable resource for the candidates and for the public. It's a model that seems to work very well. I know there's one coming up with different folks about the wars and peace, and we'll be covering that very closely. That's really our forte, and that let us know where you're going to be giving speeches.
Sounds great. Thanks a million, Pat.
All right, buddy. Good to see you.
Have a good one.
Good luck. I think we're kind of we're going to wait for Mr. Carlson to be available in a second. He's always been very generous with his time.
Jackson is up here, so Ava is invited. And so Esco is getting to go forward.
He seems to be tied up. We'll be back in a few minutes.